when you're in the experience business, there's one really important thing that you know how to do really better than anybody else. Read people. Because you convince folks to go somewhere that maybe 24 hours, 48 hours, 2 weeks before they had no intention of doing, but something that you've created made them walk through the doors and then make them stay. So you can tap into that, basic human need in a way that very few people can. And that level of skill is necessary for understanding culture in a really evocative way and being able to replicate that for other companies.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of EventSpeak with me, Big John, CEO of Beyond Experiential. Today's guest, Laura Mignott, is the CEO of DFlash, a New York-based experience communication agency, and also the host of the Reset podcast. We're super excited to welcome her to the EventSpeak forum today. Laura, thanks so much for coming on the show. How are you today?
Oh, great. It's a good old Friday. Thanks, John.
Absolutely. Well, what did you say a second ago when we were off camera? You said, Blur's Day, I believe is what you said.
Yeah, it is Blur. It's basically Blur's Day. They all blended together now. We're about 11, 55 months in at this point. So yeah, they all blur together.
I actually, I keep a journal and I've started numbering the days from the very first day that we sheltered in place in LA. And I want to say we're at day 238 today.
Oh God.
Somewhere to the tune. Mind you, in Los Angeles, where I am, we were, I believe, the first city and the first state to lock down, kind of thing. So maybe we have a little bit more time on you guys, but
hey, I'm in New York where it was, yeah.
I was just going to say, now I know you're a New Yorker, so therefore we might have been on the front end of locking it down, but man, you guys were definitely, respectfully saying ground zero on so many levels. And
seems to always happen to New York, but hey,
it's the epicenter of the world. It's the epicenter of the world. My favorite saying about New York City is when New York sneezes, the world catches a cold. And that is really it on all of the wonderful things that are New York and all of the things that are maybe not as wonderful about New York. But, on that note, how is it right now in New York City as, we're kind of teetering on this third wave? I know you guys have, you guys are still pretty locked down. Like, what's life in New York like right now, Laura?
Well, it's a different type of New York, but as always, we adapt. Yes, most of our restaurants are now outdoor dining establishments. So we've established cafe culture here in New York, like we're in Europe. So that's awesome. And everyone's still pretty much working from home, which, was great the first few months, but now I kind of miss my office. But there's like a pretty high mask compliance because we get it. I think if you were in New York in March and April, and you were sat through daily Cuomo briefings where there were thousands of people dying every single day, you took this extremely serious. And as a result of that, we don't want to have it again. And so I think that's why, we're a much more well-behaved city than many others, because we got it. It's like, if you keep hearing sirens over and over and over again in the middle of the night, again, that leaves an indelible memory on you, but it also makes you appreciate it more. So as things began to open up and everyone kind of took off the scales from their eyes, it's like, oh, this is New York. So, I think we're all kind of appreciating New York in a new and really special way.
I think that's a really beautiful perspective to have, because I look at everything that we're going through now as sort of this proverbial universal reset, and it's forcing the world to on a lot of capacities to reinvent itself. Now I hear a lot of people talking, like, oh, New York City is never going to be the same, and New York City is dying, and all of these things that I've heard. So in your opinion, how do you think New York is going to be different once we come on the other side of this pandemic? I mean, it's obviously different now, but once there's a widely distributed vaccine, once it's once we're getting back to the new normal?
Well, I think every single time something, a unique challenge is addressed in New York, we found a way to be resilient and remake new. I don't think we ever go back. We just find a way to go towards the new. And so, I was in college here in New York City when there was 9/11. I was just starting out in the middle of my career when we had the financial crash. I was here during Sandy. So it's been a precious 20 years.
You've been through it.
But, I think as a result of that, we have, this sort of special kind of armor. And I think as we look towards where we go next is that you take those memories with you, but then you figure out ways to be more innovative. So I think, as event people, we're going to figure out really, really cool and interesting ways to adapt our event spaces, how we interact with each other, how we look at our offices, how our future of work changes. And, I wasn't kidding about the whole cafe culture. That's going to be a thing now. And imagine New York being a place where year round, you can go outside and have a cappuccino. That's going to be a thing now.
That's
and
incredible.
What that does, and what that does to behavior, and how that calms people down. How you can't be flying down the street on certain streets anymore because the outside cafes are now in the street, and what closed streets look like. So, there's all this kind of interesting and fascinating new innovation that's going to come with this, from everyone using QR codes. Think about that. We all hated QR codes as event people.
Right, and now they're everywhere. We're all using them.
every restaurant that you now go to says to scan your QR code to get the
menu or whatever the case is.
The menu or pay.
Or pay, yeah.
I think about that and I go, it's it's the right time for the right technology being utilized in the right way. And, QR codes were probably about 5 years too early when we all kind of think about when we first started seeing them, 2012, 2013, 2015. But right at this moment, when the adoption of smartphones is at an all-time high, and people are looking for ways to not get sick. So therefore, you want me to scan this thing? Yes, I will.
Absolutely.
And it's made an ease of use because now we've got Apple Pay, Google Pay. So I don't even need to bring out my card. So I think as a result of that, the technologies and the innovations that come with that will lead to a lot of new and interesting things that will reshape lots of industries for the better.
Oh, 100%. It's been a common conversation on the show, and for anybody that's watching, they've heard me say this a lot, but it's reinvention out of necessity, and that's not a bad thing, because what we're seeing is, technology is growing at an exponential rate, and now we have this epistemic sort of access to everything. As you just said, we're at a point where you really, outside of your driver's license, if you're driving, you don't even need to bring your wallet leaving the house. And it's funny because I put 1,000 programs together with my agency Beyond and incorporated QR codes, and we're using them recently. I'm like, oh wow, these things are handy.
That's
really paid attention to before.
Well, yeah, you think about it, and it's for me, it's how you're going to change your behavior, because it's I went from carrying a pretty nice bag every single day that held my laptop and held my stuff and my headphones, and went to a notebook and went to the office, and I had a good 6 or 7 inch wallet, to I basically carry a card case now with my ID, my health insurance card, and a credit card. That's it.
That's all you need.
So that's all I need. And sometimes I don't even do that, because if it's somewhere across the street, I just take my phone because it's going to be Apple Pay. Right. And again, what does that lead? What does that lead to? How do you now respond? What is that? Your accessibility? I can just sort of be less distracted, to carry less things. Oh, I know I'm going to carry a heavy bag every single day, and what that means for your health and wellness. So I think there's, it's a really cool moment for us that we can all embrace and take and do really smart, innovative things. And the best people who think about that are our fellow event folks.
Absolutely. I think you bring up a great point there, because we have to, let's talk about DFlash. You guys are known for combining cutting edge digital strategy with events. Can you offer any insight into how you successfully bring those components together?
Yeah, well, we have a pretty simple model. We design experiences to make people feel welcome. And over the last 9 years, we've done about 500 plus events, plus 60 odd virtual events this past since April. Good Lord. Still holding true to that mantra. And, the idea is very simple. How do you make an experience that you want to go to and that you want to stay at? And so whether we've put rock walls in buildings, whether we've done multi-day experiences in the south of France, to whether we've done 5-day, multi-day experiences via Hopin with 100 speakers across 4 different continents, the same things hold true. The things that you want to see, the way that you could actually enjoy that stuff about sitting there going, oh my God, I'm singing for 8 hours, and make it more interesting and engaging has always been at the core of what we've done. And I think that's a testament to how we've been able to, reimagine us as an agency for this particular moment right now. And it's been a pleasure and really fascinating to see the kinds of projects we've gotten to do over the last several months as a result of, we were always thinking about how do you use technology in smart ways. We were never the people like, well, I don't know what this tech is. Well, I have a tech background. So I'm always like, oh, we're going to use tech. It can't be just for tech's sake, but how is it a utility or how is it enhance the experience? And as a result of that, for example, we've been using Zoom for over a year for smaller things. We'd never done like a huge multi-day conference, but when the ask came, we could totally do that. We're like, we'll do the research, find the best platform, we'll do it, execute, done. Yeah. And, I have a wonderful staff who, knew how to adjust. Look, when we were in March and we had a huge activation for South by that was supposed to come online, the trucks had left San Antonio. And then I had to make several phone calls being like, so can y'all turn back? How much is that going to cost?
Fooled you.
My bad. And, that wasn't an easy time, but I think, as I said, some of the interesting blessings as a result of this pandemic and being home is that for the first time in 10 years, I'm actually home. I'm not on a plane every month. And as a result of that, I had time to think and kind of design some really new and interesting creative solutions and find some interesting new ways to partner with different companies in a way I probably wouldn't have had a chance to because I'm busy running a company that requires me to go see clients every 30 days.
Absolutely. That is such a common conversation I've had amongst folks like us where we are home more than ever before. We're probably connecting even more so than we ever have before via things just like this versus even phone calls. More people are on Zoom, more people are getting more in contact with each other because, we're not able to physically do that right now. And it's interesting in this time where, people talk about 2020 as like, oh God, 2020, are you done yet? And I totally get where that comes from, right? Because let's face it, there's, you have hundreds of thousands of people that have died from this virus. You have, on one level, the racial inequality that has existed for centuries is finally come to a head. And I feel like is actually now being forced to be recognized as like, it's no longer enough just to say there's a movement. It's like what change is actually happening now. And I think we're seeing more strides in that than we ever had because it's long overdue and it's time. And every industry is looking at that. And, I think, unfortunately, there aren't many women of color in the upper ranks of the experiential marketing space. And hopefully we'll see that starting to change soon. Can you tell us about your journey into the space of ultimately landing as the CEO of DFlash?
Well, yeah, look, it's hard out here for a Black woman, let's be real. And it has always been. And, I sort of always make the joke that I sort of backed into the experience industry because it was something I just sort of literally fell into. 10, 11 years ago, I got thrown in to do an event with a woman who had become my business partner. And we just were like, oh, we just want to do events better because the events we go to suck. And so what can we do? And so like, what happens if we remove the crap that we don't like? So that's, the check-in sucks. The moderators are kind of obnoxious. The food is terrible. Like, okay, we'll be the moderators because we're generally curious about what's happening in the marketing and technology industry. We're going to make check-in really friendly and nice and make sure people who are check-in folks exude warmth and energy. We're going to pay attention to food. So when we first started, we served wine, Swedish fish, and fries because, it's cheap and easy, but like everyone, who doesn't love those things?
Exactly.
And you make people just like, and you have people meet each other. And like, if you saw someone sitting by themselves, you went up and say, hi, welcome, what brings you here? I want to learn more about you. And then after the event was over, like, oh, I got your business card. Let's go grab a coffee. Let's go grab another wine and French fries, and built those relationships. And as a result of that, that's literally how it started, where we just kept doing these monthly events around networking and made it chill and relaxed. And brands who speak as our guests were like, this is actually so well done. Why don't you guys do this for us? I'm like, sure. And, you know, in 2011, we literally got our first big brand client, and it was Mashable. And then the next one was Pepsi, and we were off to the races. And look, you know, I think as a Black woman in this industry, I've always I could totally, you know, stick it like a sore thumb, but it's because the work that I do is dope. Like,
yes.
We're not a multicultural agency on purpose. Like, I never wanted to be. That wasn't a thing that was for me. I've always been general market and like, let's go do the best possible work. Oh, I happen to be a Black lady? You can check a box internally. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah, it is.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Because I think there is this, you know, oftentimes there's this weirdness around, oh, well, they see someone who looks like me, then clearly I must have gotten in because through some program. I'm like, I have more degrees than you stick at. It's because I built relationships with awesome people, I delivered, and I'm loyal. And I think that's what this is all about. Like, we all know that we've gotten a call or a text from some client who's like, I have this really crazy request. You're like the only person I know who could probably figure this out. Can you please do it? I'm like, yeah, sure. Look, we got Samsung when we were 2 people, and we took over their entire South-by-South experience because we were referred by one of our previous clients. And they're like, well, we don't know anything about you, but she loves you. And so we're going to give you this small piece. Yeah. And we killed it. And then the next year after that, we were the lead agency among 8 agencies. And they're like, the following year, they're like, so you guys can just do the whole thing, right? Yep. We did. And so that was it. And, you know, we grew and grew and grew in, you know, organic ways. You know, we're still 99% word of mouth, but all of my clients know me. And I think, you know, that's my message to, you know, a lot of other women of color in our industry is that, like, this is not an industry where it's easy to navigate. I can tell you some horror stories about some very awful people who don't like dealing with Black ladies, and that, oh well. But I think the thing to keep is to keep your dignity. I think that just keep who you are, and, you know, do the best job for the people that value the work that you do, and knowing when to walk away when stuff is just not okay. And I think, you know, we've had a number of those experiences where, like, this is just so not, nope, time out, we're done, and we're gonna walk. And I think as we're in this moment, you know, part of the reason that, like, we're actually now doing a lot of this sort of cultural consulting as a second arm of the business is not because is precisely because we don't come from this as a D&I neck of the woods. So going back to the beginning where I said those events made everyone feel welcome, that meant everybody came. So we never had events where, like, oh, this is just a bunch of nearly white tech bars or just a bunch of Black women. It was always racially diverse. It was always gender diverse. It was always age diverse. And when we had those events for big brands, the same crowds came, whereby anyone from the rainbow you could think of was in our events, because we had a wider net to cast from, and really made that place feel inclusive without having to smack a big, you know, just D&I experience. So, like, now when we are 2020, brands are asking us, like, how do we do this? And it's like, it's the same way. How do you make people feel welcome? Make people feel at home. And what are you doing so that you can actually make some meaningful and lasting change within your organization? And if you don't know how to do that, like, let's help you. Because we've seen this, you know, when you're in the experience business, there's one really important thing that you know how to do really better than anybody else: read people. Because you convince folks to go somewhere that maybe 24 hours, 48 hours, 2 weeks before they had no intention of doing, but something that you've created made them walk through the doors and then make them stay. So you can tap into that, you know, basic human need in a way that very few people can. And that level of skill is necessary for understanding culture in a really evocative way and being able to replicate that for other companies.
Oh, absolutely. You know, that's I think ought to be so crucial. Just when you look at it even from a brand perspective, you want to appeal to the widest demographic of people there is. And you'll see obviously certain brands appeal to different demos and age groups and genders and racial backgrounds, but for the most part, the things that have stuck out to me the most when I think of the activations I've been to, whether it was at Comic-Con or whether it was at South by or whatever it was, were the ones where you would see the biggest diverse amount of people crowding around it, because now you've got everybody's attention. And I think that's something that a lot of brands are interested in. I think that's something a lot of advertising agencies and PR agencies, the kind of folks that hire agencies like us, that are interested in. And I think that's wonderful that you guys seem to just emulate that and embrace that so much. And what I'm taking from what you're saying in conclusion is it's the quality of the work, the integrity of what you're producing, and the experience that speaks above everything. As you said, then if you're going to focus on the fact that it's being done by a Black person, or it's being done by a Mexican person, it's being done by, that's a box to check, as you said. That's really good. That's two things I'm going to borrow from you now, Laura. That and Blur's Days. I'm sorry. That's really good.
It's all good.
That's
yeah,
really
look,
good.
I think, I just think, I look back on some of the stuff that we've done, and it's again, it was never intentional. Like, no, if you Google me, the first thing that comes up, it says, I put more women of color on the stage at technology events than anybody else in the world. And again, it wasn't because like I had this giant mission to put Black women on stage. It was like, I wanted to hear voices that I know are dope. And I'm really tired of hearing the same 7 voices. So let me go out to the universe and go find great people. And if you ask people for real without saying, oh, so you're a Black lady, I'd love for you to come talk about being a Black lady. No, you're really great in AI. Come talk about AI.
Yes.
And then that's the difference. And I think, our last gigantic event before COVID was last year at the Cannes Lions. It was the very first year that there was a 5-day activation on the beach during the Cannes Lions that was focused around diversity, inclusion, and equity without actually saying it. It was called Inkwell Beach Cannes. And if you didn't know what that was, you would walk in, you would meet really cool people to check in. Never changed. The food was incredible because we threw in 3 different chefs from across the country to do like fried chicken and waffles in south of France. Unreal.
Amazing.
The space was dope as hell because we put like air conditioned cabanas from the ground up we built, because our hair, like I was not about to be like frizzy in south of France. So of course I'd have air conditioned cabanas. Come on. Women thought about this stuff. On stage, we had over 100 speakers from, I think 60 countries, 60% women of color, and direct level and above was a minimum requirement. And we were packed every single day over 5 days. And the lovely, amazing feedback we got from white straight men. I remember a woman from Estonia who came through and she goes, I've never felt more welcome in anywhere than I did just 5 minutes ago. I'm like, what happened 5 minutes ago? She said, I walked in the doors at Inkwell. I'm like, oh my God, put some video.
Wow.
And I think, and the reason, and so many people were like, how did you know to do this? And it's like, because this is what it's about. Understanding that people just want to feel welcome. And, and it's not a thing where you have to sort of try so hard, but you have to try smart. And if you don't know, ask people that do, and then compensate them appropriately. Because I think that's the big problem that happens right now, is that like everyone goes, oh my gosh, who do I talk to? Like it's like, okay, well, who has a track record of doing great work? And when you look at the work and you look at the photographs, look at the video, and you see who's in the audience, like, oh, you get it. So that person you don't want to talk to. And I think my hope is that as we go through this period right now, that we get more of that and more folks get a light to shine on. Like I'm, very bullish on like lifting as I climb. So I, same thing with my podcast, like putting voices of people who wouldn't normally be highlighted on these sort of business podcasts, but you may not know what they do. And I'm like, yeah, but they're doing great work. So like, come on through. I think that's how we get to a place where folks are no longer surprised and they know like, oh my God, I had no idea, but oh, that's awesome. I want to talk to that person. And knowledge is power. And I think as we do more of that and we give people more opportunities, then we actually will be in a place where we can actually make some meaningful change.
Wow. I couldn't possibly agree more, Laura. And you say it also eloquently. Let's talk about your podcast, the Reset Podcast. You've been doing this since last February. Tell us what that's all about.
Yeah, well, we've actually technically started it in 2016. We took a year off.
Gotcha.
And we're at 100 and, oh my God, 50 episodes. And we interview, business leaders, entrepreneurs, agency leaders, and really just interesting, unique folks. So I had everyone from Rebecca Minkoff to the first Black woman to ever have a technology patent, to agency CEOs, to a burlesque dancer who was also a high school English teacher. And nice. All of them are phenomenal folks. Because, for us on the podcast, I wanted to have a space where I could hear from people in business who would give me the honest, real story of how they got there, the unvarnished version of this, but also would talk about, remark upon the work they've done in terms of like what they would tell their 25-year-old selves. Because I think, especially for younger generations, everyone assumes they've got to figure everything out by the time they're 30. And if they haven't, then they're a failure. And there's this rush to be amazing at 30. And, when I think back when I was 30, I was just starting my agency. And to be where I am now, I'm a completely different person. Like the 30-year-old me would just be like, what? I would not recognize the 40-year-old me. And that's a good thing because I got a chance to grow and evolve and have a decade of entrepreneurship. And I think the same thing goes for a lot of our guests is that, they've built so many really incredible things. And success is measured in a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to be always monetary success, but the work that you've done.
Yes.
And the impact that you can bring upon folks. In February for Black History Month, like back to my earlier point, I did 29 days of magic. So I interviewed a Black woman a day for 29 days. So I ended up with 30 because it's a leap year.
That's great.
And, every single woman had a phenomenal story, but she was actually not part of my network. I kind of said, okay, universe, I have this idea. Let's see who falls in my lap. And then all these amazing women fell into my lap. And, the same premise is like hearing their stories, being moms, working, going through miscarriages, having to pivot in the middle of an industry, like those sorts of stories and the richness that they brought to the table, anyone can respond to. And I think, again, like giving people a platform to tell their stories and what their successes can be is a really phenomenal way just to learn and grow and connect with folks. And look, we're in a relationships business. Like that's what we all do. Like how we got connected is through our mutual friend. And it's the same premise. It's like if you build these relationships and you get to learn from each other, that's how we get to understand each other.
I definitely understand that perspective you're saying, in hosting this show and just having the opportunity to do what you and I are doing now. And just, this is, obviously, as I told you off camera, we've been doing this since March. I think we've shot somewhere around creeping up on like 55 episodes and had an array of different people from all over the world. And just to have those opportunities, I always say that if you want to understand someone, listen to them, talk to them. Don't put anyone in a box, including yourself. What you said earlier about how the things that we're doing and even, in our experiences create and success is measured on many levels. I had NetJets as a client for a while, and we would do the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders conference every year in Omaha. And I got to sit in on a dinner of about 25 people or so with Warren Buffett. And someone asked Warren Buffett, what is the secret to success? And he said, well, that all depends on your definition of success. He said, if you're asking me how to make money, there's an ocean of money out there. That's easy. He said, but I ask you, how well do you manage $100? Because if you can't manage $100, you'll never manage 100 million. He said, never test the depth of the water with both feet, and above all else, lead with passion and create value in all that you do on and off the field. And I'll never forget that. Create value in all that you do. And I feel like the experiences that we've been part of and the things that Beyond and Evolve has done together, when the consumer, when the client, people walk away from it and you could see that they legitimately had a great time, that they enjoy themselves, that, as you said, they feel welcomed. It's something that they take with them. You know, it's what's the old saying? If you tell me, I'll forget. If you show me, I might remember. But if you involve me, if I experience it, I'll never forget. And I feel like that's the kind of our business, you know, in a nutshell, if you will. So a little fun. Now, with the pandemic, as you mentioned, you know, we've all been at home more. We've all had time to spend a little more time to the things that we love, whether it's, you know, I love to cook. Well, I love to eat, really, but, you know, cooking, going out to dinner, or getting takeout, curbside, cafe. I noticed on your website, Laura Mignott, that's Mignott.com for you folks out there. It says you're always on the hunt for the next great cocktail bar. Obviously, sadly, in COVID, that's not something that's as easily able to do. Yes, sniffle. But can you tell us a few of your favorites in general in New York, and why they're your favorites?
So here's the most annoying thing about this, is that my two favorites have closed. Just like, there was one really great one around the corner from me called Augustine, down here in Lower Manhattan. They closed. And then my other really awesome favorite in the Village called Existing Provisions, they also closed. But even though we're in a pandemic, we're still like cocktails. So I've been exploring new places. And I went to a place called Amaro Amaro. And kind of, I guess, this is technically Lower East Side at the beginning of Alphabet City, where they do these really incredible cocktails. And so they had this thing called a Bald Mountain, which was basically, I want to say, like rum, gin, and something else with some bitters, and it was served warm. It basically tastes like warm cinnamon tea, but with alcohol.
Oh,
it was amazing. And it was phenomenal. So I was like, okay, where is this? And so I highly recommend them. Another really good one around and also down there is the Mace Cocktail Bar. And I know them from a couple of years ago. We did a couple of events with them where, one, the bartenders are very hot. So single women, this is a really good place to go. FYI.
There you go.
But they make these incredible artisanal cocktails from scratch. And basically they do the one where you can sort of light them on fire, and then they just taste like the coolest things of all time. So I highly recommend Mace Cocktail Bar. And where else? Actually, my favorite downtown, also down here, called the Underdog. It's down on the legendary Soane Street in the Wall Street area of Manhattan. And basically they do every kind of crazy bespoke cocktail. They remix it, and the ingredients don't sound like what would be in like a gin and tonic, because you're like, what? There's no way. And then you drink it, and it's like the best gin and tonic you've ever had.
Oh my!
So yeah, I don't know how they do it. Like, it'll have all this other like bitters from the Southwest and blah blah blah. You're like, what? And then you taste it, like, this is unreal.
The secret ingredient is probably unicorn tears. They don't want to tell you that, but someone figured out how to make a unicorn cry, and they put it in those drinks.
Oh, without question. Or some little gold flecks from real leprechauns underneath the rainbow. So yeah,
the hopes and dreams of children.
Yes. Like, you have a wish, child? Here, I'll take that.
Here we go. Put it in my drink. One thing, I've spent a lot of time in New York City. I've always considered it like a second home. I was actually out there last year in the spring for almost 7 weeks for this project we did with CNN and our friends at Spearhead Marketing, and it was amazing. Like a friend of mine that is an experiential tour manager. He was on the road, so his apartment in Williamsburg was just wide open. He's like, dude, stay at my place, kind of thing. So the role of New Yorker last spring was played by me, Big John. And oh my God, I loved it. And there's just, I feel like in New York City, no matter where you go, there's so many options of anything you can imagine. And you'll find things there that you won't find anywhere else in the country, except for maybe somewhere else in the world where those folks are from, and it's their cocktails, or it's their food, or whatever they bring together. And my favorite thing to do to explore is to explore those foreign cuisines and those foreign drinks, and just it's a great way to get to know the culture. It's a great way to know people, and you talk to these people, you talk to the owners, the managers, the people in these places, and they're anxious to tell you about.
Oh, without question, yeah.
Where this came from, or why it's special, or why it's a tradition, and wherever they come from. Like, I just think that's such an incredible thing that New York has, and I'm really sincerely hoping that that when we do get on the other side of all of this, that that those places that did close will hopefully give way to new places. I have a very dear friend that had several properties in New York City, and I know that a few of them have closed, and it really was something where, it was like after all this time where he was part of this restaurant group, saved up his money, his partners bought him out, he finally opened his own place. It was his very own place, and then the pandemic hit, and they didn't make it, and I feel like that's just something where there's this misconception, that people think because your name's on the door of something that you immediately are rich, and that you immediately can just, you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, as small business owners, like, we have to be able to do what we do to be able to keep the lights on, not unlike people that work 9 to 5. It's just,
totally.
It's a different scale, you know what I mean? But I feel like one of the things that I've taken from this whole thing in conclusion is, to kind of recap, is what we said earlier, is that I know for myself, when this first happened, and my partners and I, we looked and we're like, oh my, like, what do we do? Like, in one announcement on TV or on Twitter and whatever, the whole year was wiped out like that. And I'm talking to friends of mine in the music business that, they have, and, touring bigger acts that have merch orders placed, that have, VIP packages sold, that in matter of hours, their accounts were just losing hundreds of thousands of dollars with no way to pivot, and I say to myself, well, from all of that, there has been some of these silver linings. Is while some of those industries are very much, our friends in the entertainment industry are still very much suffering and having such a hard time, we're seeing a lot of, I think, growth in new technology and things we were talking about, where we see in the brand marketing world, exciting innovations, and you're really getting to see the incredible creativity of some people, and what is about to come, and how that's going to handshake into what we see going next year, and in 2022. I'm really excited to see that. But Laura, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today. I've really enjoyed talking with you. For anybody out there that would like to contact Laura, is your website the best way to reach you?
Yeah, I thank you so much, Big John. It's been a great conversation. Yeah, you can always find me via the websites for DFlash.co, mine, LauraMignott.com, or on social medias. I'm L Mignott, on which without the T's, on all the social medias, and my DMs are always open. So I'm easily reachable, and I'm always down to connect with some folks and see how I might be able to collaborate, or just like have a virtual cocktail.
I like doing all of those things, and we here at EventSpeak appreciate you coming on, Laura, and you're always obviously welcome here. And to all of you at home, thank you so much for tuning in and making the show possible. As always, this is Big John signing off for today. Laura, thanks again. Hope to see you on this again soon. And to everyone at home, please be sure to take care of yourselves and each other.